So what if the secret to securing the whole global food supply chain and maybe even curbing a massive climate crisis at the same time was literally sitting in your garbage can right now?
Yeah, it's a wild thought, right? But it's true.
Welcome to the deep dive because, when you're at the grocery store buying chicken, you probably aren't thinking about the staggering, almost incomprehensible scale of resources it actually takes to put that affordable protein on the shelf.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean,
Oh.
people don't realize we are feeding billions of birds globally.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, we rely completely on conventional crops, mostly corn and soybean meal.
Right, which takes a massive toll on the environment.
Yeah, the sheer volume of corn and soy we need to sustain modern poultry farming is just fundamentally reshaping the planet. We're clearing vital agricultural land, we're using up just huge amounts of fresh water, and, well, creating this intense pressure on global food security just to keep the feed troughs full.
And as the global population grows, that demand for protein just skyrockets.
Exactly, the pressure is just compounding every single year.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second. Because relying strictly on corn and soy, to me, it's basically like maxing out the planet's credit card just to afford chicken nuggets.
That is a very apt analogy, actually.
Right. It works in the short term, but the math just doesn't sustain itself in the long run. We desperately need a way to produce healthy, affordable protein without totally draining our natural resources.
Which brings us to the actual focus of our deep dive today.
Yes, we're pulling insights from a really fascinating review article. It's called Sustainable Poultry Feed Formulations from Fruit and Vegetable Residues for Advancing Animal Health.
It's such a remarkable piece of research
Yeah.
because it presents a solution that hits this really rare trifecta in agriculture. It's economically viable, it's environmentally restorative, and it's highly nutritious.
And the hero of this research is something called fruit and vegetable residues, or FERs.
Right, FERs.
Which sounds highly technical, I know, but you're essentially just talking about the mountains of scraps left over from human food production, like the peels, the seeds, the leaves.
Literally everything left behind. We were talking about pomace, which is that pulpy residue you get after fruits like apples or grapes are crushed for juice.
Oh, right, like from wineries and juice factories.
Exactly. Plus citrus pulp, potato peels, carrot leaves, cabbage stems, basically all the trimmings generated during industrial food processing.
And we're already producing, what, millions of tons of this material globally every single year?
Oh, at least. But currently, the agricultural and food processing industries just treat it as this absolute burden. It's waste. It gets trucked straight to the landfill.
Which is just crazy.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that accumulation in landfills is driving a massive secondary crisis. Because when you pile thousands of tons of wet, dense fruit and vegetable byproducts into a landfill, they decompose anaerobically.
Meaning without oxygen.
Right. And that process generates enormous amounts of methane, which is a greenhouse gas that's exponentially more potent than carbon dioxide. So we're spending vast resources to grow this produce, only to let the byproducts actively pollute the environment.
And accelerate global warming.
Yeah, it's a hugely inefficient loop.
Okay, but I have to play the skeptic for a second here. Is the brilliant scientific solution to a looming global food crisis really just to, feed chickens our garbage?
Well, calling it garbage is exactly the paradigm this research is trying to dismantle.
Okay.
It's not garbage, it's untapped biomass. Redirecting these FVRs into poultry feed is actually a perfect execution of the circular economy. We're taking a costly, highly polluting waste product and intercepting it before it ever hits a landfill.
So we're basically converting a massive liability into an asset.
Exactly. By making it a high-value input for poultry farming, producers can slash their feed costs, lower their carbon footprint, and, decouple themselves from those super volatile commodity prices of corn and soy.
Okay, that makes incredible economic and environmental sense. But obviously a chicken can't thrive on, zero-calorie cardboard.
No, definitely not.
For this closed-loop system to actually work, these fruit and vegetable residues have to build a biologically healthy bird.
Which was the core question driving the researchers. They really had to comprehensively analyze the molecular makeup of these residues, just to see if they could actually sustain livestock on an industrial scale.
And looking at the data, the nutritional profile they uncovered is remarkably robust. I mean, it's not just trace amounts of water and fiber. These residues contain substantial proteins, carbohydrates, essential amino acids, and fatty acids.
Oh, absolutely. But the variations in dietary fiber, that's what really stood out to me in the data.
Yeah, let's talk about that because the fiber behaves very differently depending on the source material.
It does. It's arguably one of the most functional components in the whole mix.
Like, okay, let's look at pectin, for example. You find that heavily in citrus peels and apple pomace. And from what I understand, pectin forms this gel-like substance in the digestive tract,
Right, exactly.
which physically slows down the absorption of glucose, helping to regulate the bird's blood sugar levels. But then you contrast that with insoluble fibers, like the cellulose found in, say, cabbage leaves or vegetable stems.
Yeah, cellulose acts entirely differently. Because it doesn't dissolve in water, it provides structural bulk.
Like a broom.
Yes,
Yeah.
it acts almost like a physical broom just sweeping through the intestinal tract. It promotes regular peristalsis and keeps the digestive system moving efficiently. So both fibers are crucial, but they serve completely different mechanical roles in the bird's gut.
What's so fascinating to me is how the researchers looked way beyond just those basic macronutrients. They analyzed an incredibly diverse array of sources, like everything from banana peels and citrus pulp to pineapple and pomegranate peels.
I know, it sounds like a recipe for a tropical smoothie.
It really does. But this variety provides an absolute goldmine of micronutrients. We're talking high concentrations of vitamins A, B, C, D, and E, alongside essential minerals like potassium and calcium.
Which are completely non-negotiable for a bird, especially for skeletal development and eggshell formation.
All right, of course.
And beyond the vitamins and minerals, that diversity introduces this massive influx of phytochemicals into their diet.
Phytochemicals. These are the active molecules, right? Like flavonoids, carotenoids, and phenolic compounds.
Exactly. Once inside the bird's body, these natural polyphenols, along with vitamins C and E, they go to work on a cellular level to combat oxidative stress.
Okay, can you explain how that actually works in practice? Like, what is oxidative stress actually doing to a chicken?
Sure. Think of oxidative stress as kind of like cellular rust.
Cellular rust. I like that.
Yeah, so you have free radicals, which are these unstable molecules,
Yeah.
and they steal electrons from the lipid membranes of healthy cells.
Which causes damage.
Massive damage. It causes systemic inflammation, tissue damage, and it seriously suppresses their immunity.
Wow.
But the bioactive compounds in these fruit residues, they act as electron donors.
Oh, I see. So they neutralize the free radical.
Exactly. They neutralize those free radicals before they can even damage the cell. So it effectively puts a halt to that systemic inflammation.
So you're naturally lowering the bird's internal stress levels just through their diet. That is incredible. And I saw in the paper that these specific compounds also act as natural pigments, which has this huge commercial application.
Oh, totally. Carotenoids are a perfect example of this.
Right, the pigments that give carrots and sweet potatoes that super vivid orange color.
Yes. So when you integrate those into poultry feed, these natural pigments deposit directly into the poultry skin and the egg yolks.
And as a consumer, I know I definitely associate a rich, dark yellow yolk with a healthier, more premium egg.
We all do.
Yeah.
So instead of a farmer having to buy synthetic chemical dyes
Yeah.
to artificially color the feed to get that premium yolk.
They can just achieve the exact same result naturally just by incorporating tomato waste or red beet powder. That is such an elegant multitasking solution.
It's highly efficient.
Yeah,
But there is a catch.
there's always a catch.
Always. Plants have spent literally millions of years evolving natural defenses to avoid being eaten. So you can't simply take raw potato peels or unprocessed grape seeds and just throw them directly to a flock.
Because of the anti-nutritional factor.
right.
These plants contain compounds like oxalates, tannins, and phytates. And if I'm understanding this correctly, if a chicken eats too many tannins, those compounds will actually bind to the proteins and digestive enzymes in the bird's stomach.
Yes, effectively precipitating them out.
So the bird could be eating constantly, but still basically starving because it physically cannot absorb the nutrients?
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And oxalates operate similarly, but with minerals. They bind to calcium and form these insoluble crystals.
Wait, they actually bind to the calcium?
Yeah, so even if the feed is loaded with calcium, the bird's body cannot access it, which leads to severe skeletal issues.
Oh, wow.
And add to that the fact that the nutrient profile of something like apple pomace varies wildly depending on the soil it grew in, how ripe the apple was, how long it sat in a storage facility.
Right. It's definitely not as uniform as a perfectly calibrated, factory-made soybean pellet.
Not at all.
Which means we have to play alchemist a bit. We have to intervene and process these residues to disarm those plant defenses and unlock the bioavailability of the nutrients.
Precisely. And the researchers outline a few ways to do this. There are physical and chemical methods, which are pretty standard.
Physical processing usually involves intense heat and pressure, right? Like extrusion or high temperature pelleting.
Yeah, that physical stress denatures the proteins that make up some of those anti-nutritional factors, basically rendering them harmless.
And then there's chemical treatments, like acidification, where you introduce organic acids, like citric acid, to lower the pH of the residue.
Which is great because it halts the growth of pathogenic microbes and breaks down some of the complex cellular structures.
Right. Or you can use alkalinization, adding substances like lime to neutralize naturally acidic compounds in the fruit waste.
But while those physical and chemical methods are foundational, here is where the research gets really interesting.
Oh, yes. Biological processing.
Yes, the clear star of the show. It is essentially the process of making kombucha or kimchi, but, scaled up for industrial chicken feed.
The kombucha analogy is so good and incredibly accurate based on the paper. We're talking about microbial fermentation, ensiling, and introducing exogenous enzymes directly into the FVRs.
So instead of just blasting the citrus peels with heat, we introduce highly specific, beneficial microbes into the mix.
And those microbes go to work on the incredibly dense, complex carbohydrates that the chicken's stomach could just never break down on its own.
Exactly. The microbes act as this kind of external digestive system. They secrete their own enzymes that break the tough glycosidic bonds in the plant cell walls.
So they're converting all that complex fibrous material into simpler sugars and free amino acids, things the chicken can easily absorb.
Right. And while they are pre-digesting the food, the fermentation process actively destroys those dangerous anti-nutritional factors.
Well, right, because the microbes dismantle the tannins and oxalates as a byproduct of their own metabolism.
Exactly. Plus, just like drinking a glass of kombucha, this process saturates the feed with a massive population of live, beneficial microbial flora.
And that transformation is just critical because once processed biologically, these fruit and vegetable residues, they stop being just basic caloric sustenance. They become active physiological tools.
What the industry calls functional feed additives.
Yes, which is a huge pivot from how modern farming normally operates. Traditionally, poultry producers have to spend a fortune on synthetic additives, artificial vitamins, synthetic enzymes, prophylactic antibiotics, just to keep the birds healthy and growing at an industrial pace.
It's very expensive. But because biologically processed FERs naturally contain prebiotics, probiotics, organic acids, and those highly bioavailable vitamins, they offer a real pathway to drastically reduce or maybe even replace those synthetic chemicals.
The article has this really brilliant illustration. It maps out the cascading biological impact of introducing these functional FVRs into a bird's diet. It starts with improved nutrient absorption.
Which then triggers enhanced immune function.
Right, which drops systemic inflammation, allowing the bird to optimize its metabolic activity, cultivate a healthier gut microbiota, and ultimately produce higher quality meat and eggs.
It's an amazing chain reaction.
Yeah.
But to truly appreciate that cascade, we have to look at the internal mechanics, starting right in the gastrointestinal tract.
Okay, let's go there.
So when a chicken consumes, say, fermented apple pomace or cabbage leaves, the prebiotic fibers act as this highly specialized fuel for beneficial bacteria that are already present in the gut.
Specifically strains like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like planting a thick, deeply rooted, healthy lawn. If the grass is dense and thriving, invasive weeds simply don't have the physical space or the resources to take root.
That's a great way to look at it. By feeding the good bacteria, they multiply rapidly.
Yeah.
And they competitively exclude pathogenic bacteria, nasty stuff like E. coli or salmonella.
And as those beneficial bacteria metabolize the prebiotic fibers, they release these byproducts, short-chain fatty acids or SCFAs, compounds like butyrate, propionate, and acetate.
SCFAs are remarkable molecules. They actively lower the pH of the intestinal environment, which creates an acidic zone that is super hostile to pathogens.
But they also physically nourish the bird's internal organs too, don't they?
They do, specifically the colonocytes. Those are the cells lining the intestinal wall. Butyrate is actually the primary energy source for these cells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so by providing a constant supply of SCFAs, the intestinal wall gets thicker and more robust.
Which strengthens the intestinal barrier, ensuring that toxins and harmful bacteria remain trapped inside the digestive tract and can't leak into the bird's bloodstream.
Exactly. It's physical armor.
But the physiological benefits go way beyond just a healthy stomach. The research details how these FER diets directly impact the bird's hormonal and endocrine systems, too.
Oh, absolutely. The specific matrix of carbohydrates and proteins in these residues helps regulate the secretion of master hormones, things like insulin, thyroid hormones, and growth hormones.
Because the endocrine system is highly sensitive to nutrient availability, right? So fibers that stabilize blood sugar prevent those massive spikes and crashes in insulin.
Right. And when insulin is stable, the bird's body partitions energy much more efficiently. It directs calories toward healthy muscle development rather than just excessive fat deposition.
Plus, the diverse vitamins and minerals supplied by the FERs act as vital cofactors. They literally drive the enzymatic reactions for thyroid and growth hormone production.
Which naturally supercharges their immune system.
Sure.
I mean, the data show that birds fed these functional residues physically produce higher levels of antibodies, specifically IgA and IgG.
And they demonstrated increased size and health in their lymphatic organs.
Right. Their bodies are simply better equipped to mount a defense against environmental stressors and diseases. And they do it without relying on constant pharmaceutical intervention.
So, okay, what does this all mean when we zoom out? Because it sounds to me like we're essentially biohacking poultry.
Biohacking.
Yeah. We're cultivating birds with fortress-like intestinal barriers, highly efficient metabolic engines, and incredibly robust immune systems. And we're doing it all by feeding them the leftover fruit salads and potato peels that were destined to rot in a landfill.
Well, rather than a hack, I'd argue it is a return to biological optimization.
Oh, I like that.
We are finally providing these animals with the complex, diverse biochemical inputs their physiology actually evolved to utilize. We're moving away from the highly processed, really monotonous diet of standard corn and soy.
Which makes total sense. Now, if you are listening to this right now, you might not be running a commercial poultry operation. You might just be a person trying to navigate the grocery store.
Right.
But this shift directly impacts you because when the agricultural industry isn't entirely held hostage to the volatile commodity prices and climate vulnerabilities of global corn and soy markets, the cost of producing protein becomes significantly more stable.
And it provides a tangible, highly scalable solution to the agricultural waste crisis. We are literally transforming methane-producing, polluting landfill waste into a carbon-efficient, closed-loop food system.
Which is huge.
It is. As our global population continues to expand and the demand for affordable protein just intensifies, developing these resilient supply chains, it's not just some nice environmental goal. It is a fundamental necessity for global food security.
It's a perfect illustration of how the answer to a seemingly insurmountable modern crisis might just require us to look at our own trash through a completely different lens.
It truly is. And, before we conclude this deep dive, there's one final, really staggering insight from the latter half of the research that we absolutely have to mention.
Oh, the epigenetic finding.
Yes, because the researchers examined the effects of these diets at the actual level of genetic expression.
Okay, lay it on us.
So they discovered that feeding birds the highly bioactive phenolic compounds extracted specifically from blueberry and blackberry pomace, it didn't just passively improve their health. It actively induced epigenetic modulation of the chicken's gut microbiome and the bird's own cellular pathways.
Wait, meaning the compounds from the berry waste actually altered how the chicken's genes were expressing themselves?
Precisely. Through mechanisms like DNA methylation, the bioactive compounds essentially reached into the cellular architecture and turned specific genetic switches on and off.
That is absolutely wild.
Right. Specifically, they altered the expression of genes directly related to energy regulation and carbohydrate metabolism, basically optimizing the bird's fundamental genetic potential based purely on the introduction of fruit byproducts.
It's just mind-blowing.
So here is the thought to really chew on as we wrap up. If intercepting discarded fruit scraps and biologically processing them into livestock feed can fundamentally alter a bird's genetic expression, completely remodel their microbiome, and fortify their immune system,
What subtle, invisible epigenetic changes might be happening within our own bodies?
exactly, as we finally begin to engineer these sustainable circular food systems and as we reintroduce these incredibly complex, kind of forgotten bioactive compounds back into the global agricultural loop.
How might we inadvertently be biohacking our own future?
Right.
It certainly makes you wonder what physiological benefits we've been starving ourselves of by maxing out the planet's credit card on a monotonous diet of corn and soy for the last 50 years. Definitely something to think about the next time you look at a chicken nugget.